Hey, welcome, Possibility Seekers. I'm excited today to talk to Annalie Blundell, the People Whisperer. Annalie is an author, speaker, and communication expert who specializes in decoding the people dynamics that drive performance. Annalie, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I heard so much about you and all the great stuff you're doing with coaching and the like, and we'll get into that. But this is the It's All Possible podcast. So what does the word possibility mean to you?
Ooh, I love the word possibility. To me, it's actually about opportunity. So when I hear possibility, I think of all the things that I could be doing that are available to me. So for me, that's about opportunity, and opportunity is about growth. And if there's one thing I'm more obsessed about than people, and let me say that is a hard task, but if there's one thing I'm more obsessed about than people, it's about growth and development. Always learning and growing and challenging myself. So for me, possibility is opportunity equals growth.
I love it. Yeah, that's why I love the word so much. I love about possibility because it gives us inspiration, it gives us hope, it gives us a sense of where, and especially if you're in a leadership position, giving someone possibility and they think about opportunity and potential. So I always like it. I always like possibility to be where opportunity, and potential come together, and so we've got possibility. Hey, let's talk about coaching now. How did you get into the coaching business?
Well, I fell into it actually. I started my corporate life at the ANZ Bank, and I was on the graduate program, and I had lots of development as part of that program. And one of the programs we went on was Leader as Coach, and I thought, oh, this stuff's pretty great. Wow, how come we didn't learn this at uni or ever? I mean, this stuff's really amazing. But I didn't do anything with it at the time other than try and use it within my work. So I went on with my career, and I got to a certain point where I thought, you know what, I want to do something with my life where I feel like it's a passion project, like a dancer or an artist who just happens to get paid for the work that they do. And, as much as I love the bank, don't get me wrong, it was a great place to work. You still had to pay me to turn up, So I discovered coaching. I had this conversation with this woman who was a professional executive coach. And I'd only heard of coaching in terms of, that one little program we did, which was just really more about asking questions than telling. And I didn't think it was an actual job, a career job. I thought coaching was something that you did on the sidelines at the Super Bowl, like the sort of cheerleader, pom-pom, rah-rah, you got this, go hard, come on, that sort of thing. And that wasn't the case. And I spoke with this woman, and she told me all the books that she read and the training that she'd done. And I thought, I've been reading those books since I was 15. I think I'm born for this conversation. I'm obsessed with people, trying to figure out why they do what they do, really listening when they're speaking and trying to work out who is this person in front of me and, what's really going on for them. So I thought I would do something really sensible, and I started a coaching diploma on the side. As you do, Rob, you don't want to be too rash about these things.
No, nice little side hustle going.
A little side hustle, very sensible. I thought I will do a little side hustle. When I get my qualification, I'll slowly build up my, client list, and then I'll quit my job. 2 weeks later, I quit my job.
Fast track program.
Because I just thought, I did that first intake weekend. I went, this is where I belong. These are my people. This is where I belong. I went back to work, and I thought, I'm really not interested in this meeting. I'm really not interested in this report. I just can't be here. I can't be here anymore. I have to go.
No, I'm not really interested in these people I'm with right now. I need you people.
Different people. Yeah. So, once I found that place for me, I was just on that track, and I did everything I could to, get that up and running as quickly as possible. And that was 15 years ago, and I haven't really looked back.
Wow, that's fantastic to kind of fall into that. I was interested in your point earlier on. You said that, you did the coaching course at ANZ, and then you really didn't hear about the word coaching or find out about coaching until you kind of met the executive coach. Do you think it's changed a bit now? Do you think anything's changed in the 15 years? Because where we actually get to coaching is more in our vernacular of leadership or in vernacular of corporate?
100%. I was just reflecting on this the other day. Early on in my career, when I would say, I'm at a barbecue or something, and people say, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a coach. And they'd say, oh, what sport? And I'm like, No, 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 no. I'm an executive coach, like a personal coach, with people about their jobs. And I had to really educate the market as to what that was. And nowadays I say I'm a coach and people just go, oh, what companies do you work with? So they get it straight away that, this idea of an executive coach or a professional coach is very much a legitimate role within an organization. So much so that I'm now seeing the cultural shift towards a coaching culture in an organization, which is just brilliant, of course.
And really what all high performance organizations kind of do anyway. They just didn't say that, but the fact is we're now scaling it up. I think we're now starting to see that. So what makes a good coach from your view?
Well, that is a really great question. And there's lots of professional bodies that are constantly asking themselves that question and, coming up with the core competencies of coaching. For me, and from the research that I've seen, what makes a good coach is your ability to be there with that person and have that connection. And, I think about it in terms of there's lots of different coaching schools and coaching methodologies, and there's many ways into the conversation, but you can be the best coach in the world, the most highly skilled coach in the world. But if you don't have that level of trust and connection with the person you're coaching with, they're not going to open up to you. They're not going to lean into the conversation. They're not going to, be vulnerable in the conversation. So really, it's about that chemistry between the coach and the coachee. And for me, from the coaching perspective, it's your ability to create that level of psychological safety. Can I trust this person? They're asking me questions about my job and how I'm feeling, what I'm struggling with. Is it safe for me to really tell the truth here to get value from the conversation?
Yeah, I really like that. And I think this thing where you talked about being really skilled coach, I think if you can't create that culture, that environment, it doesn't be a culture, but that environment of care, like I genuinely care for that person. I've generally got empathy for that person. I really want to understand them. If you haven't got that as a skill, I don't think you can call yourself a coach.
Exactly.
I think you can do past the qualification, at the ICF and go, hey, I'm a great coach, but I really don't give a shit about you, frankly.
Right.
I think the empathy and the care is that really interesting part. And I think we're starting to see that become part of what I call a coaching culture when we have that. Let's talk about that as well, because you talk about a fearless culture. Tell us what you mean by a fearless culture.
So for me, a fearless culture is something where individuals and the way we do things around here is authentic. Now, I don't mean authentic. Sometimes people use the word authentic as an excuse to bruise people and, tell it like it is, because that's authentic. To me, authentic is compassion, care, and courage. So you want to be able to say what needs to be said in a kind and clear way, to use the words of the wonderful Brené Brown. She says kind, so clear is kind. Clear is kind. So if we're in a fearless culture, this is around being able to say what needs to be said. And one of the major issues we have, not just across the board in organizations, not just corporate organizations, but societies, because it's a human issue, this is the issue of being scared of the critical or the tough conversation. As humans, we're wired to connect. We're tribal beings. We want to be part of the gang. It used to be really important to our survival. And that wiring is still deep within our brain. So worse than physical pain can be the pain of social exclusion, of isolation, of being ejected from the group. So the way your brain thinks you're going to be ejected from the group is if you have, hard feedback or bad feedback, or you tell someone what they don't want to hear, just that typical critical conversation.
Yeah, I like that part about authentic too. I think that is a mask some people use to kind of unload, and that I agree with you. That is not being authentic. That's just being nasty.
Right, exactly.
And then going, but I was being authentic because I'm a total prick, and that's how I am. So I think that's that. And you got to say, well, they probably were being authentic, but that's not really what we're after.
Correct.
And by the way, we're not really after you if you're going to be that authentic self. So please don't bring yourself. That's classic. I like the fearless culture, and the one thing I can say is that I think anyway that unless you've got psychological safety, unless you've got a fearless culture, you cannot have innovation.
Yeah,
it's impossible. And I've worked at Apple and a number of creatives and startup businesses, and unless you have that culture of where failure is not so much celebrated, but we've learned something. Where failure is we tried, like we got in the arena, we have a crack at it. Sometimes it works, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Unless you've got that as a culture, people won't have a go. They'll sit back, they'll do what's safe and boring and comfortable, and will never really expand. So that's, I think that fearless culture is a really important thing.
And one of the key elements of that, you know, the ability to be okay or embrace failure, also a key element of the coaching culture. For me, a huge part of all of that is curiosity. Because, you know, certainly from a coaching perspective, you know, to build that psychological safety, number one factor is to get curious. You know, what's really going on for this person? We're so quick to judge. In fact, we're born to judge. We have to judge. You know, we need to make really quick decisions. Is this rustling in the bushes something that's going to, you know, is there something that's going to jump out and kill me? I need to make a quick decision about this. I need to judge. But of course, in the corporate world, that's not as useful as it once was in the jungle. So we are wired to make judgments and assessments because it helps us generalize and learn and move forward quickly. And yet the capacity to really think, take a look at the judgments that are running through your mind and deliberately cultivate a sense of curiosity means when people show up with, you know, unresourceful behaviors, let's call it that, Rob, unresourceful behaviors, or they're failing, or they're doing things that you don't approve of, cultivating that sense of curiosity to really be thinking through, wonder what's going on for them. What else could be going on for them? Is it just what I'm thinking, or is there something else there? And the same thing for the fearless culture is this, when we're entering into critical conversations, the ability to think through what could be going on with that other person, giving them the benefit of the doubt. I always talk about this idea of positive intent. You know, are we assuming a positive intent? We think this person was overstepping the mark. Do they know what the mark was? Has anyone told them what the mark was? Have you told them what the mark was? What if they think they're going above and beyond and you're seeing it as you're stepping on my turf? Like, let's get inside their head, assume a positive intent, and have the conversation from there.
It's a great saying in Hollywood, Annalie, called "Nobody knows anything."
Right.
And it was done by a film producer, and I use it a lot because the point is, don't assume.
Yes.
Don't assume. Every time Hollywood's assumed the market will do that, or you produce a film that will take off, it never has. And people have assumed that won't work, and it has, right? And so there's a great saying, which is, you know, nobody knows anything. And the reality is we love to box. We love to box the way we think, not the way it's actually happening. And so many times we've all in our, and you know, definitely in our histories have seen this example where we assumed that, but in fact there was something completely didn't. They didn't know what the boundary was. They didn't know what the rule was. Had we actually explained that? And I saw a classic of a leader the other day, a really good self-aware leader. I really like him. And he said he'd gone through his data, his analytics, and he realized that one of the team members in his team was really, really failing at onboarding new customers. Like, was winning them, but not onboarding them. And it was a real stat that he's a data guy, right? So he loves his data, and he picked this one out, but he loves turning it into behaviors. And so he kind of had a coaching session with them about what was happening in the onboarding. And he said about halfway through the coaching session, he'd realized that he'd actually hadn't taken them through the onboarding training. So, and he's listening going, okay, so right, this is on me. I actually had, that's the data point, you know, it was really, and he said it was really cool. He realized that they'd failing because he hadn't actually done it, but he's made this assumption that now they were just all about winning the business and just getting on to the next deal. You know, some salespeople do, when in fact that wasn't the intent of that person. They just hadn't been showing what you did after step 6.
Isn't that a classic? And, you know, that happens a lot in coaching. You know, when you take on executive coaching work, you know, we have this saying in coaching, when there's one finger pointing forward, there's 3 fingers pointing back, you know, at you. So often we're projecting onto others the things that are actually going on for us. We just can't see them for whatever reason. And I think that's such a beautiful example of that in a somewhat very analytical manner, right? A very objective manner, rather than some sort of mindset or, you know, behavior. It's actually something that was quite specific. What a beautiful example.
Which is what I love data for. If you can use data to be specific. Jim Barksdale, and you've heard of Jim Barksdale, who's one of the big IBM executive, and then it's big venture capitalist, and more recently. And he's got a great quote, and it's this. He said, if we've got data, let's use the data. If we've only got opinions, let's go with mine.
Right? Oh, I like that. That's good.
Classic. But his whole point is, guys, come up with the data, because if you don't, and I own 60% of the company, we're going with my opinion because I've got more at stake, right? Which is pretty cool. Brilliant. But he's what he's saying is, give me the evidence. I need the evidence, and then we'll make a really decision. It's not about politics. But if all you've got is opinions, I think mine's better than yours. So let's do it. Hey, what do we talk about?
Share says mine's most important.
Exactly right. We talk about emotional intelligence and interpersonal intelligence. Tell us about those two.
So emotional intelligence is the idea that you are able to notice, manage, and understand your own emotions and those of people around you. First, sort of really, it really came to the fore with Daniel Goleman. He spent a lot of time in this space, wrote a very fat, dense book around this. Thankfully, there's lots of summaries out there for those of you who want to do a bit of a quick overview. So emotional intelligence is really about becoming aware of, understanding, and working with your emotions, your emotional state, and those of the people around you. Interpersonal intelligence, also known as social intelligence. So again, Daniel Goleman's taken this body of work and evolved it into social intelligence. For me, I call it interpersonal intelligence just because I think it makes a little bit more sense. It's interpersonal, it's between you and I.
It does.
Yeah, it's not just me and what's going on with my emotions. It's what's happening in the space between us. And when you're looking at interpersonal intelligence and interpersonal dynamics, this is where you're getting into the realm of teams and team dynamics, right? So for me, it's one thing to be aware of your own emotions and emotional state. That's number one. We need, first dynamic, we need to be able to understand ourselves to then be able to understand other people, if for no other reason that we affect other people. So once you put a group of people together, their behaviors change in relation to the group. So you can't even say, we've got these 5 individuals and these are these kinds of individuals, because when we bring them together, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on, I'm intimidated by that person. I feel, railroaded by that person. So I'm going to shut down. So my brilliance on a solo perspective, you're never going to see in this group, because there's something around the dynamics that affects the way I show up. So this interpersonal intelligence is the ability to go, how am I showing up in relation to other people? Am I still bringing the best of me into this group conversation, this meeting, this steering committee, whatever it might be? And how am I as an individual casting a shadow over this group? What is my footprint here? How am I affecting and infecting the behaviors of people around us? I talk about this idea of contagion. So emotions are contagious, attitudes, moods, we're all contagious. You think about it, you stub your toe at the start of the day and right, that's it. And then you shout at the dog and you snap at your wife and you get to work and you start your team meeting like that. And everybody knows the boss is in a funk, right? And everybody shuts down and they start tippy-toeing around you because your emotions are contagious. And if you don't have the wherewithal or the self-awareness to say, hang on, I want the best out of these people. They need to be in a positive psychological state. I'm infecting them with my mood. Okay, I need to get a grip and I need to be able to shift this.
That's fantastic. And I would point out the great Crowded House song. Wherever you go, you take the weather.
The weather with you.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And that's such a great line. But that's essentially what this is. We take the weather, whether it's sunny or we've had a bad day, I've got a parking fine, had a break up with somebody, whatever it is. As a leader, we take it. I was just talking with some team leaders the other day. I was talking about a colleague of mine who actually owns a couple of hairdressing salons, and he's just renovated one. And I said to him, what drove the renovation? And he said to me, well, actually, it's really personal. I kind of was through COVID. It was a tough time and I kind of lost my mojo and I really wasn't excited. And he said, as the leader, and he's got a big team, he said, if I'm not excited, they're not excited. If they're not excited, then I can't get, that's going to reflect back to our customers and our clients. And he said, so I've got to be excited. So he said, frankly, I actually did it for myself. I really wanted the buzz back in here. So I've redesigned. I'm really excited about the salon. I love coming in here. And that energy translates to my team, which translates to clients. So I thought, How cool is that? And I said to him, man, I said, that is not a selfish act. That is a business act. You know, that's a really smart thing for you to be self-aware that it got you down. And you've refreshed the business, but you've actually refreshed it. And you're the one who's actually, because you're such a pivotal person in the business. I really like that. You probably hear this, and I get this as well. We run coaching sessions, or we get people coaching, and they might do a one-day sugar hit with us. And the old days when we did live things, and we do them here, and they get excited. And then we hear this thing back that, had the coaching go, wow, I just haven't had time this week. There was so much going on, or I had to get the forecast done. I had to get my numbers, or whatever. Why do leaders say that? And what do you think they really mean when they say they don't have time to coach?
I love it when they say, I don't have time to coach. I love that, because that to me tells me they're at the beginning of the coaching journey. And that's great. We all start there, because when we first learn, we get the sugar hit, we do the one hit wonder, the 1-day program or whatever it is, which is a great way to get a bunch of information you need to begin. So perfect. Now you've got the grow model, and you've got some mindset ideas and whatnot. So you now have this idea that a coaching conversation is a formal conversation. It might be something you have to book. I'm going to have that coaching conversation. I put it in my diary. It takes an hour. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I've got real stuff to do. I've got real work to do. So the number one thing is they think coaching takes a long amount of time because it's a full formal conversation. So number one, the best coaching is often coaching on the fly. It can be, in my coach programs, I talk about coaching can be a word. It doesn't even have to be a question. It might be something as simple as, these customers, they always do that. Always?
Yeah.
Really? Tell me more about that. Like, just the word always is enough to break that, that story in their head and get them to reflect on the assumption they're making about that client. That can be a coaching intervention, start to finish. And it was literally one word, always. So this whole idea of, does it take time? It depends on how you're doing it. If you embody a leader as coach culture, not just a set of methodologies. For me, it's about the principles, not just the process. So the principles are, it's a coaching mindset, it's a coaching approach. And you can do that on the fly, in the corridor conversation, with one word, with one look, and it doesn't have to take time. The other thing, what I notice is that the less present you are in that conversation, the longer it will take. Yeah. So we're distracted. We've got things pinging. I'm dragging my last meeting with me in the conversation. I'm already thinking about the meeting I'm going to. I'm already going, yep. I got it. I know what you need to do. I'm waiting for you to stop talking so I can give you the answer so I can get on with it. Right.
Yeah.
And then of course, I'm going to start with the classic. Okay. Did you try this? And have you thought about this? Which we know is a question, but it's a closed question. It's leading the witness, Your Honor. So we know that's also not really what we're looking for. So if you just stop, breathe, pay attention, have an intention to pay attention, full attention. What can I help you with? Okay, what have you tried already? Okay, brilliant. How confident are you that that's going to work? Great, go ahead. Again, 10 seconds for that conversation, and you will get more value out of that because you were truly in there.
Yeah, I think I really like that coaching approach and having it as a coaching culture. I don't know if you've read Ram Charan's book, The Attacker Mindset, but Ram Charan is just talking about coaching high performance people, and he talks about 3 things that really work. Just exactly what you said, and he said that when you're coaching high performers, it's got to be relatable, it's got to be relevant, like in the moment, and it's got to be useful.
Yes.
And some of the best coaching he's seen is literally with leaders coming out of a boardroom or out of a sales call or off the stage, and they've said, really like that, the way you did that. What do you think you could improve next time? Here's what I think. That's what I would do. Maybe cut back that slightly. Like, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
Right. It's relatable because I just did it. And so it's in my mind, and it's really useful for next time. And it's short. It's like as they're walking to the lift or they're going to the car. And it's kind of what you said. If you have that coaching culture, in many ways, you can, one of the things I like the grow model is because if you get that in your head, you can literally do that, as you said, in 10 to 15 seconds. What we try, what was relevant, what's next, you just doesn't have to be that formal, I got to use the template, then I got to put it in salesforce.com, and then I got to put it over there, and then I got to make a note here. And I think there's a time and place for that, but doesn't have to always be like that.
Yeah, and another piece of this too is when we talk about time. So there's this idea that when you're learning a new skill, it's not going to take you any new time, but that's a fallacy. If you're I don't know, learning a new sport, you're bad at the beginning, right? So your ability to be concise and effective, or run fast, or get to the ball quickly, it is determined by how fit you are, how much you can predict where the ball's going to go. So the better you get at it, the quicker you become at it. So one of the things is people also have to go through this. Often they go through this stage of having to retrain people. I've built my identity as a leader on someone who knows. I get paid for what I know. I get paid for my opinion. And now all of a sudden you're telling me I'm not allowed to give my advice, my hard-earned advice. I have to ask questions. And so I have to, first of all, break that habit of immediately responding with some advice or the answer. And so people expect advice from me. So if all of a sudden I say, what would you do? What do you think? What have you tried? There's this, we all have to go through this stage of skepticism where your team members are sort of going, why are you holding out on me? Like, you always just give me the answer. What do you do? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. Are you testing me? What's happening? Just tell me the answer. You always tell me the answer. So there's a little bit of retraining that has to be done, because the direct reports or your team members have to become retrained to come with their thoughts, come with your thinking. I'm going to say to you, what have you tried? What's your outcome here? What's really going on here? What's the awareness level like of that other person? So if you haven't come with your thinking, it's going to take longer. And once they get that, it goes much quicker.
Yeah, and that's how you collapse the time. But it's a little bit of process difference, isn't it? Especially if you've been again, the heart might be in the right place from your coaching. Like, you want to give all the information, you want to give all this stuff, but 20 years of knowledge, whatever you have, you kind of want to deliver it. But the reality is now it's a different way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What about one-on-one versus group coaching?
So there's a number of different types of coaching. So obviously one-on-one is pretty simple. It's your own agenda. So that's nice and easy. From a purist, there's a couple of things around here too. From a purist coaching perspective, so from me as an independent coach, people come to me and I don't have to worry about what their boss is doing or the other department's doing. It's just what this person is doing. Whereas if you are a coach within an organization, i.e. you're a leader who coaches, you're still responsible for the outcome. Yeah, you're still responsible for what people are doing. So there's a different way of relating to the individual, but still one-on-one is typically that person's agenda. When you move to group coaching, there's a few different types of group coaching. One is team coaching. So you might be a leader who has a team and wants to coach their team. And so you're all pulling in the same direction. The idea is you have a shared purpose. You may have shared obstacles, and you're all heading towards the same goal. So you're coaching together for the same outcome, as opposed to group coaching. So for example, when I run, leadership development programs, or I run my Women at Work program, I have a group of women then that come together, and for a couple of months we do group coaching, but it's not team coaching. They're not an intact team. It's a whole bunch of individual women working on their individual goals. But what happens is I often run it by way of, okay, what are some of the things that people have got going on? And then we look for themes. We might have 8 people in the room, but we might only get through 3 conversations. But we go with whatever's coming up in the room. There is often something of value to everyone else in the room. These things don't happen by accident. There's always, some common thread that you can get value from. But it is distinct to intact team coaching.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think that's why, to me, coaching is so exciting. It's a never-ending journey. It's not like, well, I did coaching, I did the course, like you and ANZ, I did the course in coaching. So what's next, right? I've seen a template, I filled it out, and I had a coaching moment. That was fantastic. That was exciting for me. Now we're moving on. It is a journey, isn't it? So one-on-one coaching, group coaching, team coaching. There's so much in it. Just talk about women, because you've done some really amazing stuff in here, and you've got a book, which I definitely have to get. Do you think women make better transformational leaders?
I'm not sure that I should answer that as a woman and start some kind of debate, but I can tell you what the research says. So there's a bunch of research out there that would suggest that women rate higher on some of the core characteristics of good leadership. So yeah, take that for whatever it's worth. What's important here is when it comes to making good leaders, one of the things that we need to be thinking about is there's nothing really wrong with women's leadership style. That's let's put that out there. Women, men, great leaders are great leaders. One of the things we need to come to is that great leaders come in all shapes and sizes. We've got quiet leaders. We've got, at the front of the room leaders, charismatic leaders. We've got, so we need to be able to understand that good leadership isn't just the charismatic solo leader who stands at the front of the organization, typically male. We have to, appreciate that it comes in all shapes and sizes. And so when one of the issues that women face in the leadership realm is that because they don't appear like the typical leader that we are used to seeing, let's face it, most of the leaders in history, in politics, in society, and whatever have been men. That's just the way it's been. So we are used to seeing the example of male leadership. And so when we see a female leader and perhaps they come across, they show more vulnerability, or they show more of their empathic side, or, whatever that case might be, our little brain, without us, telling it to, makes an automatic assessment that, if they're too nice, they can't be a good leader. If they're too congenial or they're too accommodating, well, clearly they're not strong enough to be a leader. They need to be more authoritative. So the issue we face is that we don't know how to appreciate the strengths of women when they don't show up the way men exhibit them.
So do you think it's so here's my view on it. I actually think women make better transformational leaders when women are allowed to lead like women.
Right.
What I often see, and it's a culture sometimes, is that some women feel the need, and I get it, feel the need to be successful in the org. They need to appear like the men. And they're so out of there, and you can just see it. They're not comfortable with it, they're not happy with it. I've literally seen women leaders deteriorate physically because of such a change they're trying to make to be successful, when in fact, if they're allowed to be themselves, psychological safety, they would be so much more effective. So I actually believe naturally their empathy, their understanding, there's a whole bunch of instincts. You will know better than me, but I just find them, and certainly my experience through the leaders I've had a lot of female and women leaders, which I've really enjoyed. In fact, I've found them the easiest to work with, the best to work with, because of the qualities they've had, the better understanding. And I've done a lot of yacht racing as well. And one of the things I can tell you is that either the women and girls I've sailed with, their concentration span is like double the guys. They make excellent tacticians and navigators for that reason. Because they have that ability to just focus and continue on, and a little more level-headed.
Well, that is one of the differences that we show. So when we look at, key differences between men and women, there's not that many actual differences other than what's been socialized. So we've been conditioned very differently. So that's why people think, we're very different, because we're allowed to express emotion. We're allowed to express care. Men, not so much. Not that men don't have emotions and don't have care, but, you got to man up. So there's conditioning that plays a big role in the perceived differences. But one of the differences they have found when they do one of the big 5 personality tests is that women tend to rate higher on conscientiousness. So, this is dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And this is why you have so many women, in the support area, in the mechanics area, because they're the ones who are going to make sure it's right. This is why when you have more women on boards, they're more ethical. The governance is different. So because we're really paying attention at a different level. For whatever reason, this is just one of the things that they found.
I really like it. It's really well put. You wrote the book, When Men Lead Women. Why was the need to write the book?
Well, I was running programs for women. So I originally called the program for women in leadership, because that's what women were looking for. I need a women's leadership program. Yep. But I became more and more uncomfortable with that as a title, because there's no difference in the training of a woman leader and a male leader. Like if you want to become, if you want leadership training, do any generic leadership training program. It will. Women aren't that different in terms of what we need. Yeah. So I relabeled it to Women at Work. Because what women actually need is support being a minority in a majority landscape. So how do you get heard? How do you have cut through? How are you seen as a confident, credible leader if you don't look like, sound like, walk like, talk like what we think a leader is? So it's really helping women navigate this landscape where they are on the outer. Without compromising, without changing who they are, without feeling like they have to become a man, that sort of thing. So, I've been running these programs for a number of years and doing coaching with the women. And as part of that program, when I run it in-house with corporates, I also include men, right? There's no point having this a solo conversation. I think that's ridiculous. So as part of the program, we bring managers into the program and have conversations with them around what's going to happen and what their role is in supporting. And then they come in at the end and stuff like that. Now, typically, depending on the level you're at, a lot of those managers happen to be men. So by virtue of that, I pick up a lot of men in these conversations. So my job in that initial conversation is to say, hey, here's the sort of stuff that's going on. Here's what the research is showing. Here's the feedback that's come from the people in your organization. These are the experiences that women are having. Let's talk about that. And often those conversations are very illuminating to some men. And again, it brings me back to this idea that, I always say men aren't bad, they're not purposefully biased. No one is, but they are blinkered. They don't have the experience of being a woman in a workplace because they're just not. But they do have the experience of being a minority in a majority. If you take, a stay-at-home dad and put him in the mummy and me class, they'll all of a sudden know what that feels like, right? So we're not unaware of what it feels like to be on the margins. It's just that in corporate world, in communication, in media, in government, in politics, women just happen to be in the minority most of the time. So that's why it seems like it's men and women when actually it's just majority minority. So I'm having these conversations with the men and they're saying things to me. We'd have the conversation, they'd pull me aside afterwards and in private say, I didn't really understand how much this was going on. I'm not sure that I'm fully equipped to take on this journey, or I'm now actually a bit worried about what I don't know. Like, am I putting my foot in it every day? I feel not equipped enough. And some of them would say, I hear what you're saying, but I still actually don't really get it. Like, is it really that different for women? I mean, I go for a job and they go for a job. We went to the same uni, we have the same experiences, and I got the job. I worked just as hard as they did. Like, how is that unfair? I really don't get it. And Annalie, to be honest, sometimes I look at the investment in women and I go, well, isn't that now unfair? Like, how is that fair? So I took all those conversations and I realized that men were having those conversations with me in private because it felt too taboo to have that conversation in the group.
Yeah.
I can't say to a group, I don't really think there's an issue because I'm just going to look like a sexist pig. To be honest, that's not going to fly. And so how am I going to move through the barriers I have or the questions I have or the concerns if I don't have a safe place to voice them? So I wrote this book. It's a short book. Rob, it's an hour's read, right? And I did that on purpose. I don't want this to be some great tome with lots of theory. It's just, hey, here's some of the things that are going on.
So it's not dense.
Yeah, it's not dense. That's right. Here's some of the things that are going on for women, right? Take it or leave it. Talk to some women, find out, validate for yourself. Don't even take my word for it. Go ask some questions. Here's where I see men in their journey. Some are supporters, some are saboteurs, some are somewhere in the middle, searching for their place, looking for more information. And then here's some things that you can do to progress yourself along that journey. Here's what you can read, what you can watch, who you can ask, who you can talk to help you progress in a safe space if you don't feel comfortable bringing it out into the open.
Look, well, full compliments for writing it. And I got to say, as much as you think you're aware, I did a podcast a couple of episodes ago with Kate Bushell from who's founded Girls of Impact.
Yes,
and Kate's a client,
great.
and in there she just mentioned this stuff that blew me away about the conversations, the side conversations. If you listen to it, and I was listening to it, going, "Really, Kate? Really, is it happening?" And she's like, "Yeah, like this happened here, there," and there was just too many examples, and it was like quite frightening. I felt that because it really pushed against my values, but I just was like really amazed. So I'm really encourage people, if you're listening to the podcast, where men lead women, we'll talk about Annalee's contact details a bit later on. A couple of questions I want to ask you. You've got your program to build more female leaders. Why did you feel the need to build more female leaders?
I felt the need because the need was in the market. It was interesting, you know, in fact, I start my program by saying, I never intended to be here, to be honest. You know, when I started my coaching, the journey typically is, you know, you do coaching, you coach executives, they ask you to work with their team, then, you know, you're running leadership development programs, then you're on the stage keynoting, and then you're writing books, right? That's sort of what happens after 15 years in the game. And when I first started my coaching, I remember people saying, what's your niche? What's your niche? And all these people saying, I coach women, I coach women. And I thought, women don't need coaching. They can help themselves. Like, why are we putting all this support into women? Like, what's wrong with women? You know, if you want something, go for it. I didn't understand why we had all this support for women. And so I thought, well, that's not me. I'm not going to be the woman's coach. Nope, you can sort yourself out. And as I progressed in my journey and I supported men and women, and I had very intimate, very private, very real conversations about the dynamics of gender in the workplace and what women were really struggling with that they weren't comfortable talking about, and the confusion men had that they weren't comfortable talking about. I thought, you know what? There's really stuff going on here. Oh, I get it now. Now I know why all those older, wiser women were focused on women. And that is because there is a need to support a minority group in a majority landscape. Remember, it's not just because they're women, it's because they're a minority. And so I realized that there was stuff that even I didn't get. And now I get, I know that I can do something about this. So I pulled this program together, and really it was just like, it just went like hotcakes. There was such a demand in the market for it. And remember, I'm positioning this program not just as we're building women leaders because we need more women leaders. No. There's women leaders everywhere, but they're sitting in the back office. They're in the support office. They're too good to promote, because if we promote Sarah out of there, that whole back end's going to collapse, because, you know, she does 10 different jobs, FYI, you know, she's too good to move, sort of thing. So it's not that we needed more women to be, I didn't need to develop leadership in women. It was there. I needed more women in the conversation, women at the levels of power, to affect that balance. And so that was my approach, was to support women to get into those areas with the leadership skills that they've already got. And of course, if they want more, they can go to a generic program.
Was that a confidence thing as well? You think that while the women, you talk about them, somebody taking on 10 roles and holding everything there, and they feel they need to do that, was also a confidence that you teach as well for them to actually to show up. I mean, a lot of people use that word, they use the phrase show up. Yeah. I think that's what their meaning is, to actually show up with their leadership skills that they inherently already have, but have the confidence to do that.
Yeah. So, and this is where, so confidence is a really big conversation, Rob, really, really big conversation. Women are 2 times more likely to be given the feedback in performance reviews that they need to show more confidence. They're more often more likely to be told that they need more experience. And that is a death cycle, because you build confidence through experience. So if you don't have enough confidence, people aren't going to pick you to give you the experience. So you're not going to be able to build the experience. So you can't show more confidence. So there is this like death spiral when it comes to the confidence realm. And what's really going on is, it's not that women aren't confident or can't be confident. It's that traditionally women are conditioned to downplay confidence. So modesty equals influence for women. You think about it. If a woman is too big for her britches, she's tooting her own horn, she's all a bit above herself, you know, we will pull her down as quick can be, men and women, mostly women. Whereas men, we are used to men being center of attention. Men are conditioned to show confidence. That's how, you know, you lead the pack, you beat your mates. It's all about the trophies that you got. You know, this is what we're doing as boys. And so we're right from the get-go, we are conditioning our relationship to confidence very differently. Women minimize their confidence, men maximize their confidence. And so what that means is women display less confidence. But when you ask them secretly, you know, when you sort of get them to reflect on places they have been confident, they've got confidence, they've got capability, not too dissimilar from men, other than what they tell themselves.
Do you think it's changing through generations?
Yes. What I'm seeing is, so I've got 15-year-old, she goes to an all-girls school, and man, the confidence that those girls are getting is, brilliant. I look at it and I go, yes, that's great. You're going to need that. You're going to need that. I have also spoken with women who went to all girls schools and told me the story. I came out of my high school, I went into uni, I thought I could take on the world. Like, I thought there was no difference between men and women. I was right to go. And she said, a couple of years into the workforce, I started doubting. I started questioning, and I started losing my confidence. And this is also what the research shows, is that women and men enter the workforce with roughly the same level of confidence. But after about 2 or 3 years in the workforce, women's confidence, not in themselves, but in the system, starts to wane. So
Right.
I see who's getting a promotion. It's a person who stays back really late. Well, I'm pregnant with my first child. I can't put in those hours. I can't do visible work. So, that non-visible work is right. So now I'm okay. Well, I guess I'll just lower my standards. Maybe I won't put my hat in that ring because I don't have that experience now. This person does. They were able to work on those, great assignments. I wasn't. Therefore, I'm not going to be as good. Therefore, I won't even bother trying.
Yeah, so visibly they take the message, even though that person might have been sitting there being completely unproductive, and they're more productive in the 2 hours and the 6 hours that person was there. A la George Costanza from Seinfeld, who slept overnight to make it look like he was actually doing work. Yeah, so I agree with you. I think the generations are really changing it up, and what I'm seeing certainly from Gen Z and now Gen Alpha is a real. Beforehand, it was like, how do I spell diversity? Now then it became diversity is really important. To the culture now is they demand diversity. Yeah. Like it's not an option, and if it's not there in the workplace, they're not working there. And I'm starting to see this shift also come through in music as well. I'm really enjoying the latest, some really great women in power who are just in music. They, excuse me, they have an ability to do it. I think on a big stage. So you're seeing, people like Poppy, who's leading, a heavy metal band now. It would never have been the case beforehand. You're seeing stuff from what Miley's doing and just sort of putting that stuff out there. I really think it's exciting. But you are right. Sometimes they get brought down by women, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love what that journey you talked about with the diversity piece, right? Like, how do you spell it to we demand it, and just sort of doing a callback, as they say in comedy. The reason this interpersonal intelligence is so important is because we're demanding diversity now. It's an expectation, it's a KRA or, a KPI or whatever it is. We're required to meet quotas or targets in some organizations. But diversity without understanding is just difference, and the brain rejects difference. So all I see is someone who doesn't get it. They didn't talk like me, walk like me, didn't go to my school. They just don't really get it. We'll just put up with them until, we can kind of get what we want. So if we are not aware of how we're seeing other people and the impact we're having on other people based on the judgments and the perceptions we have of them, then we are only ever going to have difference, despite how diverse our teams and organizations actually are.
Well, I think the other thing is, once we understand that diversity actually makes you more successful, more aware, and let's take it to a bottom line because it'll get there at some point, more profitable. Diversity actually speeds up decision-making, has better teamwork, has better collaboration. That's what diversity, my experience has been. So I'm all for diversity because it actually makes you better and makes an organization better.
And you know what, we talked before around fearless cultures and courage and stuff like that. And for me, diversity, you're right, it has so many benefits. Like, this is very, very well researched. You can find, bottom line benefits for diversity any way you look. What people don't often talk about is the fact that true diverse, teams and companies, they're not necessarily comfortable. It's not comfortable. I've worked in great diverse teams, even in the work I do now, I'm surrounded by people who are different, and we have very robust conversations, Rob, very robust conversations. And I can tell you that I don't always enjoy them. And I'm like, this doesn't always feel good. I'm not always happy with the outcome. And yet on reflection, I think actually that was the best outcome. But I did not enjoy that process. So if we're not comfortable in the discomfort, we will never truly be able to embrace diversity.
Yeah, that's really well said. Really well said. I think that's very true, because when we grow through being challenged, we grow when we're a little bit uncomfortable, but it's having the ability, like you have, and it's clearly a well-developed trait in yourself, to self-reflect or reflect back on it and go, actually, what did I learn from that? Why was it uncomfortable? But not everyone has that ability and has that resourcefulness or the time or even the interest in actually doing it.
Yeah.
Hey, we're nearly out of time. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. If we could, you talked a little bit about starting off at ANZ and your journey as a coach. What if we could go back in time, and what advice would you have for 15-year-old Annalene? I know it's your daughter's age, but I'm interested, what advice are you giving her, or what advice would you have for 15-year-old Annalene if we went back in the time machine?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is stop wearing so much flannelette. It's not cool. It doesn't look good.
Clearly a Nirvana fan.
Yeah, correct. So apart from the Blundstones and, and all the flannelette shirts, apart from the fashion advice, I would say start before you feel ready. In my career, in my schooling, in all the things I've taken on, I have been guilty of that perfectionism. I have been guilty of waiting for permission. I've been guilty of, wanting to make sure before I back myself. And, sometimes I look back and go, wow, where would I have been if I had have backed myself earlier? What was there to lose if I had have just given it a crack? So, I say this in my program for women, particularly in terms of confidence, because confidence is built through action. Yeah. So you have to take action to build evidence you can do the thing, to be confident in doing the thing. So for me, it's start when you feel 40% ready. You're not quite ready. You're really not. Your eyes should be bugging out of your head a little bit. You should be feeling a little bit stretched, a little bit uncomfortable, but you've got enough to get going. That's all you need, enough to get going.
Yeah, I like to say live on the other side of yes.
Ooh, nice. That's great.
Now, where can people find out more about you?
At my website, annalieblundell.com. So that'll be in the show notes. It's right up here in my logo.
Well done.
Here on my logo. Annalieblundell.com. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn. I produce short snippet videos. There's books, there's programs. Everything's on the website.
Everything you need. Start at Annalie's headquarters. Annalie, start there at her website. Fantastic. It'll also be in the show notes. Annalie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful, very exciting, and very, very enlightening.
Thanks, Rob. It was my pleasure.
Okay.